Creepy bus driver. I live near the end of the bus line and that's where I've met Andre, a 50 years old bus driver. We always chatted on his breaks and he started offering me free bus rides, which I've always denied because I thought it wasn't fair to the people paying, but I also thought it was nice of him and didn't thought it was weird at first. One day, he mentioned that he wanted to visit his sick mom in other city nearby and asked me if I wanted to go with him, that he would wait for me in my street if I agreed and that we could go back in the same day. No one had to know. Then I politely denied and that's when he asked me my age. I replied that I'm 18 and he got visibly shocked and replied that he thought I was 14 and apologized. I didn't reply anything else at the time, but now it strikes me that I should have said something. Nowadays, I try my best to avoid him and he don't seem very eager to talk to me anymore, so, bus driver intending to lure children to travel alone with him to another city, let's not meet any longer. A bus driver actively stalks me. I'm a 17-year-old girl who attended college until recently. My parents don't drive so I rode buses to get to class, mainly routes 50s and 60s as they all led to my college. One day I received a message from an unknown person on Facebook and it was an older man in his 50s. He said hello and I was wondering who it was at this point. I asked him and he told me he is a bus driver and that he sees me on my commute every day and thought I was cute. Now, I never talked to this guy so he must have intentionally read my bus card while I was swiping it and found out my name and surname and then found me on Facebook. I was so creeped out and he asked me to go get coffee with him. When I told him I had a boyfriend he told me he only wanted to be friends with me. I blocked him after that. A few weeks ago I received another message from another account with the same name of the guy asking me how I am. I replied saying that it wasn't his business and to leave me alone, where he then inquired if I was single and that if I was single he could fix that. I told him to please never talk to me again and blocked him. However, I'm almost sure I'll hear from him in a few weeks' time as it keeps repeating itself. I'm really scared of getting on those routes especially at night or early morning because I'd be terrified if I ended up alone with him on the bus. He has sent me explicit photos of himself and selfies as well. Bus driver misses my stop and lady goes mental on me. I moved to a new area and so, I was learning my new bus routes and stops to and from uni. I was on my way home en route in the evening and as I tapped my card, there was a lady probably in her 60s sitting up front at the seat behind the bus driver. As I got on, she wrinkled her nose up at me. I chalked this up to her maybe being a little old-fashioned as I was wearing ripped jeans and a AC/DC shirt but I don't look tough or mean in any respect. I was kind of taken aback by her intense reaction but I soon forgot about it. By the time I pressed the button to call for my stop the bus driver overshot and missed it which he realized immediately and apologized for to which I replied, "It's okay, no worries," and he goes to pull over at the next stop further up. The bus was empty at this point save for a person up the back and the grumpy one up front and as I got up to get off the older lady turns right around in her chair with the ugliest look and begins to berate me in a loud voice, "Are you stupid? Why would you press that button, you idiot girl? I hope you never drive, you'll kill someone, and you've wasted my time, you idiot," over and over, and the bus driver looked back for a second dumbfounded but stayed out of it. She had these dagger eyes fixed on me as she just became louder and more angry and I just ended up avoiding her gaze as I was so confused and intimidated. I was half in shock of how nasty and loud she was being towards me so when the next stop came I quickly made for the exit and all I could say was, "Yeah, okay, cool." She just leaned towards me almost sticking her face into my shoulder that I felt her brush against me as I walked past. I was freaked out to say the least and darted out the door and I hear her growl another insult under her voice as the doors close, "So yeah, you freakish elderly bully, let's not meet." Creepy bus driver pulled over in a dark and lonely neighborhood. Hey guys, this happened a few years ago when I was 17. I used to visit my brother and sister in Tempe, Arizona during school breaks because my town was incredibly boring. While they were at work, I'd go off and do some exploring on my own. One day, I decided to get on a bus and head to the mall. The bus I got on was called the Orbit. They're free and they're small buses, like half the size of regular ones. It took 2 buses to get there, with a stop at the station in between. I went and did my shopping and took the first bus back to the station. Whilst waiting for the second bus, I met this guy around my age and we made conversation. I asked him what bus I should take because I wasn't familiar with the streets and he pointed me to the right one. I get on the bus, and the guy gets on as well and we continue our conversation for a while till he gets off. I put my earphones on and space out, watching the sun start to set. After a while, I realized that none of the streets look familiar to the ones I had seen earlier. I start to get a weird feeling in my stomach, so I pick up a map that they have available and notice I'm on the wrong bus. I get a little more nervous, seeing how it was already getting dark, and to make matters worse, my phone was on 3%. I know the buses go in a circuit, so I just sit back and try to figure out what time I'll make it back to the station to see when I'll catch the right bus. As I'm reading the map, the last people on the bus get off and the driver starts talking to me. "Hey," he calls out from the front, "are you lost?" I was a little thrown off, but I told him that I had gotten on the wrong bus. He said okay, and then shortly after, he pulls into a really dark neighborhood and pulls over to the side of the road. I know buses usually have to pull over at stops for a bit if they're ahead of schedule, so I figured that's what the driver was doing. But instead he gets up and starts to head towards me. He's a big man, around 6 feet 0 inches and maybe 200 pounds. He grabs a map, sits down right next to me, and starts asking me a lot of questions like, "What bus are you supposed to be taking? Do you go to ASU? How old are you?" I was trying to be courteous, but as our conversation kept going, my heart was racing faster and faster. The last question he asked me made me start to tear up. "Is anyone expecting you?" I told him yes, my brother. He gets up and starts heading to the front. Finally, I thought, he gets to his seat, and instead of sitting down, he shuts the doors and turns off the light in the F-King bus. So I'm sitting there, shaking and crying in almost complete darkness, and I see the silhouette of his shadow head back to me and sit right next to me again. As soon as he sits down next to me, something in me snaps, and I jump up and run towards the doors of the bus as fast as I can, and I start banging and pushing on them until they open. I got out and ran as fast as I could, to a store or a restaurant, because my battery was completely drained. As I'm running, I hear him yell out behind me, and then I see him drive by super fast. Luckily, he didn't stop again. I ran for several blocks until I reached a cell phone store and burst in there crying and asking for a charger. From there, I called my brother and he came to pick me up. I was on the complete opposite side of town too. When my brother picked me up, I told him what happened, and he said he was going to call the bus company and report the driver. I should have been more careful, but at the time I was just a naive teenager. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened to the driver, but I hope he got what's coming to him. So creepy orbit driver, let's not meet ever again. The bus driver. So when I was 15, I was completely incorrigible and hung out with some not so great people. My main friend group hung out at this house that we dubbed our house. Our house was technically a foreclosed property that had previously been owned by one of my friend's parents. The parents had moved out and left their 2 adult children, who were the siblings of my friend my age, living at the house. Anyway, every single day after school my friends and I would meet up with the older siblings at our house and get absolutely hammered. Around 4 p.m. everyone would show up with fifths and drugs, and it was just a constant party every night. Things were pretty out of control there. One night, we were all drunk AF as usual, and I got in a fight with my boyfriend. I decided I wanted to leave, but Northwest One would drive me home and the buses had stopped running. It was late, probably 12 or 1 a.m. I lived 6 miles away, and this was an urban area that was sketchy to walk at night. But I was pissed and drunk, so I told everyone to go fuck themselves and left. I got 3/4 of the way home without incident. I hadn't seen a single car or person, and while I was kind of scared, I was feeling more confident the closer I got to home. I was crossing the freeway overpass that glides down into the valley where my neighborhood is. All of a sudden, I hear a whirring noise and see lights coming from behind me. I look over my shoulder and see a bus coming up beside me. The destination mark is blank and the lights inside are dim. I turn away and keep walking, and as the bus gets closer it slows down and drives right next to me. This goes on for maybe 30 seconds when I start to feel genuinely uncomfortable and glance up. The bus stops and the driver opens the door. He's not wearing a uniform. I still remember him pretty clearly, 50-something, salt and pepper hair, medium length for a man, thick darker gray beard, copper wire-rimmed glasses. He leans against the driver's wheel and looks me up and down. "You look really young." he says, and I, like an idiot, stutter that I'm 15, thinking, like most 15-year-olds, that 15 isn't young. He smiled really slow and said, this is dangerous area to be walking alone and there are all types of men out there, why don't I get on the bus? Now, I may have been drunk, I may have been 15 and I may have been deludedly self-confident, but I wasn't that stupid. Something just didn't feel right, you know. I told him no thank you and quickly started walking again. For a while, the bus behind me didn't move, and then I heard its brakes lift and it started creeping up behind me again. By this time, I'm over the bridge and walking down a sidewalk with apartment complexes on either side. The bus pulls up again and opens its doors while following me. The man again tells me it's not safe, and asks me to get on the bus. I told him no, I'm really almost home, it's fine, and I start walking faster. He closes the doors but keeps the bus keeping pace with me and I'm really starting to worry. Finally I decide to just run. So I start running and at first I put some distance between myself and the bus, but he's still behind me. I slow down when I feel far enough away and catch my breath but keep walking. Next thing I know, the bus starts gaining on me again and honks its horn. I screamed and fell over, still super drunk and now very scared. I got up and scurried into the neighborhood at my side and hid behind one of the carports. I could still see the road and the bus had stopped. Its doors opened and the man came to the doorway and looked out both directions. He lingered there for a moment and then I heard him say shit. And he got back to his seat, closed the doors and drove away. It took me another 30 minutes to get home, even though it was less than a mile at that point because I took a convoluted way through bushes and yards to get home. Let's not meet again.